Welcome to the Pint and Click podcast from Des Plaines Public Library. I'm Dave. I'm here with Tony and Jami. We're all librarians and assistants from the Des Plaines Library, and we're here to give you reviews and recommendations for the best books, movies, TV shows, video games, comic books, etc. First, we're each going to share one thing with the group worth pursuing. Then we'll all talk about the Netflix series Jessica Jones together. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to talk about Punch Club, which is a video game. It's available on Steam. It's available on iOS. It was created by Lazy Bear Games. And this is a game, it's best described as a tycoon game, if you've ever played Zoo Tycoon or Hospital Manager or something like that. The story is very different. The story is very much, you're a young man who is trying to make his way in the fighting world. He's trying to prove himself at the local gym. He's sparring with nearby opponents, and he's trying to train up, become a better fighter, make some money, find some direction in his life. And I found it completely enthralling. I could not stop playing. I downloaded it, I installed it, and I played for about 5 hours. I had to run a quick errand, and then I came right back home and started playing again. So I put in, I believe it was 8 hours on one Monday just playing this game.
How does that relate to the tycoon type of game? Because to me, those things sound pretty different.
It is. So it is. The story and the gameplay are not usually connected, not usually in the same game. So it's all about management of your character's statistics and needs. So in some way, it's kind of like The Sims. Your character needs to eat. Your character needs to sleep, and you can manage their mood. And if they're in a better mood, they have better workouts. They also have their fighting statistics, which are strength, agility, and stamina. And you can kind of train those up, and you should really focus on one over the others. Like, I'm going to be a strength fighter, I'm going to be a boxer, or I'm going to be an agile fighter, and that's going to be dodges and kicks. It's about managing your day to keep those statistics up, to keep your strength up, and then every once in a while a fight comes along, and then you kind of put yourself in that match and you see how it goes. So that's the one very strange thing about this, is that the fighting is totally simulated. It's hands off the controller, hands off the keyboard. You're not pressing buttons, you just watch your fighter fight. And maybe they do well, maybe they do poorly. There's some die rolls that, maybe they dodge, maybe they don't. But you just kind of see what happens. Maybe you win, maybe you lose. That's surprisingly exciting because you have no control. It's like watching a match on TV or watching any sort of sport on TV. You're rooting for your character to win, and you feel bad when they lose and excited when they win. Part of that need to, I want to succeed again, and I want to succeed again, is what kept me going in this game.
Yeah, I saw a trailer for it, and it looked like an action movie or something where the guy is like always training or something and doing like push-ups or something like that. Do you think it gets repetitive to have to like go through similar training routines, or is there enough variety within like the activities you can do to train up your fighter?
So the activities will change. The stats are the same. You're always building strength. You're always building agility. But along the way, first you start off, you can only do push-ups in your garage. And then you join a gym and you can use the gym equipment there. And then you buy more equipment for your garage. And it gets more efficient to train in certain ways, and the equipment gets better. You find ways to enhance your workouts with energy bars or drinks and things like that. So in that way, it's kind of like a clicker game where you start off just clicking the one thing over and over, and then the clicking gets more efficient and a little bit more automatic. So there's times when I'm in my garage and I'm just doing a loop, like do the push-ups on the carpet, now do the running on the treadmill, now do the bench presses on the bench, all right, back to the carpet and do push-ups again. But all that time, I'm worried about my character's mood, I'm worried about his energy, I've got to fight in a day and a half, I want to get this stat to 14 and it's only at 12, I don't know if I'm going to make it. So the actual gameplay is repetitive, but these deadlines with the scheduled fights are very effective. And the story is very minimal, but just enough to make it interesting. So there is a story, and it's ripped from 80s action movies.
Of course.
There are, your girlfriend is named Adrian. You've got an old man mentor who kind of, introduces you to the world of fighting. You run into a man named Tyler outside of a bar who asks if you ever fought yourself. I fought judo alligators in the sewer. There's 4 of them. They were trained by a raccoon. There's a lot of little jokes there, but there's also a lot of, I'm bored of doing this repetitive fight over and over and over again. It's like you can go to a flowchart. The story is laid out in a flowchart, and you can see, I haven't finished this quest line with Adrian. I haven't finished this quest line with Casey. I should go do that because I'm a little bored of the same old fights again and again.
So is there a specific path you're going to? Is there a specific end game or, best fighter that you're trying to beat at the end, or...
The prologue to the story is your father is murdered when you're a young child. The goal of the game presumably is to find the murderer and get revenge. I haven't finished it, so I don't know if that happens, and I don't know how that plays out exactly. You start off just fighting in a local boxing ring at Silver's gym. Eventually, the Mafia Don has you fighting on his private island against exotic fighters. So I really don't know how this all ties into the murderer thing, but presumably
it all comes together.
Presumably, it comes together later.
Sounds really rewarding. It sounds like you're exploring all these different 80s action movies in different ways, and like you don't know where it's going to end. It sounds pretty exciting. Yeah,
going through different tropes and different stories. It's a blast. It's funny. The writing is very, again, minimal and good. It's not overwrought. It doesn't get boring. It doesn't get bogged down. It's just enough to be like, here's one really good joke, and let's move on to the next story beat. Mm-hmm. Maybe my favorite part is it looks like it's not 8-bit, not quite 16-bit. It looks like a VGA adventure game from that era of Space Quest 4, the Sierra, the LucasArts adventure games. It's kind of got that fidelity, and that's right at home for me because I grew up with Space Quest and Sierra. That feels familiar to me, so there's a lot of nostalgia and retro appeal going on in that game for me personally. And it's $10 on Steam. And for $10, I've played 8 hours in one day, then I put in another set. I'm probably at 16 hours. That's pretty good for $10. Mm-hmm. So I absolutely recommend Punch Club, not Fight Club, Punch Club. It's on iOS now. I played it on Steam. I played it on my PC, but I think it's phenomenal. I'm still not done, but I'm definitely going to finish as soon as I can.
Do you think it would still have the appeal for other people who haven't grown up with that nostalgia factor for the 80s? Or do you feel like it might seem too outdated for people who are used to having video games with resolution that's so high?
I think if you like The Sims, you'll still like this game. Or if you like Zoo Tycoon, you'll still like this game. The story is just enough that it doesn't get boring for me. And it's not terribly deep. The references don't become overwhelming. They're just scattered around. When I get bored of, all right, let's train for the next fight. Let's train for the next fight. Let's train for the next fight. All right, it's been an hour of training for the next fight. I want to go fight the judo alligators just to do something different and refresh a little bit. So I think if you like The Sims, I think you'll like this game.
Okay.
If you like tycoon games, you'll probably like this game. After that, no promises. This fit into my brain perfectly, and there's not a lot of games that do that. So I don't know if you've got a brain like mine. You'll love this game. If you don't, I make no promises whether or not this game will appeal to you.
Very cool.
So I'll be talking about the Netflix phenomenon, Making a Murderer right now, or I like to call it Serial 2.0, which is essentially kind of what it is in some ways, which is taking a true crime that is still going on right now. And it's the story of a man called Stephen Avery, who was in 1985 convicted of a rape of a woman, and 18 years later was set free based on DNA evidence that pointed to another person. And there was a lot of hullabaloo about his wrongful conviction. It ended up having the Department of Justice come in and look at the police that were investigating him, and a lot of legislation that made it easier for people who were wrongfully convicted to get compensation. And so he was lauded as, this wrongfully convicted man, and they were suing these police for $36 million. And then 2 years later, while that was still going on, he was arrested for the murder of another woman whose remains were found on his land and whose car keys were found in Stephen Avery's trailer. and whose blood and his own blood was found in her car. So it became this huge media sensation. So the show starts out at the beginning talking about this old case where he was wrongfully convicted, and then it moves on to talking about the current case that he's still in jail for, that he thinks he's being set up for. No matter what you think about his innocence or his guilt, when you see this footage, it's so hard not to think about all the different ways that the criminal justice system failed this man, who was poor, who was, they said, had an IQ of 70, who did not have a lot of resources available to him at the beginning. And a cornerstone of his conviction for the second case was his nephew, his 16-year-old nephew, who confessed that Avery made him help rape and kill this woman. And so they were like, oh, there's a confession. Stephen Avery definitely did it. When you look at and see the footage, this nephew, he has a really low IQ as well. And when they're interrogating him, he doesn't really understand what's going on. They're feeding him everything that they want him to say. He doesn't know what's happening. At one point he says, can I be let go? I need to go to sixth period. And even when they say he's going to jail, they're taking him into jail, he says, will I be out tomorrow? When he talks to his mom that night, he says, will you tape WrestleMania for me so I can see it later? And I'm sure, stuff like this goes on all the time. But to be able to see it in real time is very, heart-wrenching. At some points in the interview, I was like, I need to stop this and take a break because it just viscerally makes you, as a citizen, so angry that stuff like this happens all the time. We see it in the news, but it's definitely different watching this unfold very slowly, very painfully. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so popular right now is we have this sense of injustice. And also the fact that it's real and that it's still going on gives the reader this sense that we are in some way involved. There's a lot of petitions going on online. So it's like you're being involved in a continuing story, something that you can still participate in some way, which I think is interesting and was part of the serial phenomenon as well.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the techniques? I mean, aside from just doing a great job of showing you those individual things, like how were they actually able to get that footage or that?
Well, they've been working on this documentary for 10 years. So a lot of the footage came when they were actually interviewing them in 2005 when this was still happening. Yeah. And when the earlier cases were going on, luckily, since there were so many interviews, there was so much TV footage on it, they can show a lot of this information without it having to be recreated, like they do on like C-level TV shows. Because they did film everything because it was such a big news story in Wisconsin. They have so much footage from it, which makes it really fascinating because you get to see what his mom was saying during that time, what his sister was saying. So you get kind of a full picture, or as full as we can get from, a documentary that ostensibly has its own aims and kind of ideas as well, because there has been complaints that they, chose specific footage. They left certain things out. And obviously not everything can show ever a full picture when you're sorting through hundreds and hundreds of hours to know what's really the real story, which I think can be a complicating factor when you're looking at something that's a true story, or at least someone whose life you're looking at. But it was very compelling, but also very painful to look at. So
I'm very interested in that personal feeling. Was it sympathy or empathy for the individuals involved? Were you mad at the system? Was it a feeling of powerlessness or a struggle? Like, how exactly did that affect you?
I think it has to do contextually with what's going on right now, especially here in Chicago, of how people feel like the police are not held culpable for their actions against citizens, especially people who are more underprivileged, don't have as many resources to be able to stand up for themselves. So I think it's a very timely time for this documentary series to come out because there is this sense of injustice or feeling that police are covering things up. So I think part of that was the context of the culture that we're living in right now. And part of it was just the personal pain of, especially with the 16-year-old boy, someone that we think of as he was young, he didn't have a parent or a lawyer with him for a lot of the interviews and stuff. So that was, on a personal level, for him as the character, really sad. So I think on multiple levels, like on the individual and the societal level, it made me feel really, not necessarily powerless, but that these were terrible things that had happened and are still happening all the time.
Yeah. makes me think like maybe the reason that I don't want to necessarily watch it is a good reason to watch it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly, because it definitely is one of those things where you will get upset about it. And I had pushed it off for a while because I was like, I don't know how emotionally I'm going to feel about it. And then I watched 4 episodes at one time, and I was like, I need to take a break. I haven't finished the series yet, but it's hard to stomach. I listened to Serial, and that was also in some ways painful, but I think having the visual side of it as well, besides just being auditory through a podcast, makes it a lot more harrowing. So I would recommend it if you like true crime, if you liked Serial, if you want to stay up till 6 a.m. watching Netflix.
As opposed to playing Punch Club.
Exactly.
What are the basics on how many episodes? How long are they?
They are an hour and 4 minutes, an hour and 5 minutes apiece. There are 10 episodes.
And they're all on Netflix right now?
And they're all on Netflix. They're interested in a second series that will follow up on the story because things are still unfolding right now. So
Yeah, and things are going to change as a result of this series.
The show, yep.
Because we're going to have to do a serious beat shift here, I'll introduce my book as The Magicians, but I'll introduce it with a little background on myself. The cool thing about this book, and then one of the reasons I really connect with it, is because the main character, Quentin, I can kind of relate to the fact that he kind of lives in his own world of fantasy. He's a bookworm in the sense that he read this series of books and kind of keeps reading it. He's almost more invested or similarly invested in that world. So like maybe for me it's like video games or something like that, and then he is in the real world. And of course that world is a magical place. It's fantasy and all that. A very intelligent kid, like top of his class. And he was about to apply to Princeton. He's 17 at the start of this book. He's the kind of guy who always checks the back of cabinets to make sure there's no portal in the back, taking him away to another world. But in this particular case, he ends up stumbling through this gateway into an admissions test to a school of magic. So he's all of a sudden in this world, grueling admissions test, and he thinks he's dreaming, but he's seeing crazy things in front of him, and then, he goes through this, admission test, gets accepted, and he's given this opportunity that he just thinks that he's like really lucky because it's kind of like what he always dreamed,
Sure.
right? And Jamie, if you want to, I'm really excited about the book, so if you want to jump in and share your excitement too at any point. Yeah, so this is a 3-book series, and it starts with Quentin going to this school for magic and, gaining some of these great powers. But it's also very existential and by nature. It's self-aware that this is a mage school and that we've all kind of read books and we've grown up with series about Narnia or about Lord of the Rings, and that about these great expectations for what you can do with such great magical powers. But then it toys with that expectation quite a bit and asks questions like what happens after that honeymoon period wears off when you realize, so you're back in the real world and you have magical powers. Now what? In that way, it'll kind of tie into the whole Jessica Jones thing. But it's a very character-based and character-driven story, but then it's also very entertaining and kind of just keeps you glued to the pages. I don't know how else to say it. It's the first book in a long time that I've reread deliberately. And one of the reasons I want to reread it is because there's a sci-fi series coming out, or that's kind of the pilot's already out, and it's I am pretty excited for it. It gives a lot of dimension and space and just fleshes out the characters in ways that I wouldn't have thought. The book itself was enough for me, and then the fact that this series is coming out is just really exciting. So I'm interested to see where they take that and how that kind of pans out. But
I think existential is a really good word to use for this series. I only read the first one. My sisters loved it and both recommended it to me, and I'm a big, magic fan. And I went into it really excited, and it is a great book. But it also profoundly depressed me, especially, I think, because of what my expectations for a magical book would be. And like you said, it kind of turns it on its head, and it also talks a lot about the downsides of that life. And at the end, I walked away feeling really sad about, I guess, this magical landscape that I felt like they intentionally stabbed a knife through and kind of opened it up. And I think that's a fascinating thing to do, but also for a person who wants to be charmed and stuff. It was sad, but I think it's a really interesting technique or thing to explore.
yeah, and the TV show does some really interesting things too. I think it is actually trying to tell the story of a main protagonist and actually really 2 protagonists, Quentin and his friend, Julia. Julia has a totally different path and relationship to magic, and it doesn't go into any of that really in Magician's Book 1. So it's a really, this TV show has a lot of potential to kind of tell those stories in parallel. So I recommend checking it out. It's on Sci-Fi right now, episode 1 for free. You can just go on to Sci-Fi and start watching it. So that's The Magicians, and the book is by Lev Grossman.
So I haven't read the book. I know the two of you have. It sounds like a slightly different take on magic. Like it's not Harry Potter. It's not quite Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. It's not quite, Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time. Is that what makes this book stand out? Is its take on magic specifically, or is it the characterization or the writing style?
I mean, I would say it's probably the characterization and so the magic is very interesting, and it's a different take on it, and it might be unique, it might not, it might be drawn from a lot of different things. But I think it really keeps you going because it's setting up these characters and giving you something about them that isn't maybe fully developed or fully there yet. I mean, he's 17 at the start of it, but he goes through this whole college experience in the sense that he's going to mature a little bit, and then there's still things that seem like he's missing. And it's a great portrait of a flawed character, and
definitely,
there's a lot of really interesting things to explore with a flawed character with magic, and how maybe he's making the same mistakes, or maybe he has these dreams of grandeur and just hasn't attained them quite yet. And I think there's a lot of repetition and driving home the point, but you're feeling it along with the characters really very much. Yeah.
The part that drew me wasn't necessarily the magic's groundbreaking aspects, but that the way that it was described was so visual to me. Mm-hmm. There's certain scenes, like one, they're in a room and everyone's frozen, and I could imagine that so perfectly and feel the character's emotions. So I think the characterization, like you said, is really strong, as well as putting forth a coherent and imaginative system of magic as well. And it's definitely something that adults would all enjoy. It's pretty dark, I would say.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah,
there's a lot of swears. There's a lot of boozing and getting into trouble and stuff like that. So it's definitely a book for adults, but it's not about that stuff. It's just, it helps you understand the characters a little bit better.
All right, well, thank you, Tony. I might have to read that book now. That was a pretty convincing argument. But now we're going to talk about Jessica Jones, which is a Netflix series. It's been out for a few months now, and we've all watched it in whatever time we could find, among these other things. So Jessica Jones, I'll start off with a breakdown. It's a Marvel series. It's Netflix's second Marvel series after Daredevil, which follows the story of a woman named Jessica Jones, and she is a private investigator. The story begins where she's clearly troubled, she's defensive, and a lot of the show kind of reveals her story and her conflicts and why those exist and how she's going to go about fighting them or fleeing from them. So it stars Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones, and there are a number of other characters in her life. She's got her best friend Trish, who is kind of a successful talk show host. She's connected to this lawyer named Jerry, who kind of feeds her jobs once in a while. She has an interest in the bartender across the street by the name of Luke Cage, and anyone who reads comic books, that should send up some red flags. Finally, she's haunted by a individual we come to know as Kilgrave, played by David Tennant. So her story is based on characters from a comic book called Alias, written by Brian Michael Bendis, and it was a very successful series, and it was one of Marvel's first series intended for adults. There would be sexual content, there would be drug use, there would be horrific violence when appropriate, when necessary. So it had their Marvel Max imprint on the cover, and it was very successful, but never really hit the big time until now, I feel. So we're going to have a discussion about the story, and there might be minor spoilers. We're not going to go out of our way to ruin it for anyone, but just so you know, we'll tell a little bit more about these characters as we go. So what do we have to say about Jessica Jones?
Well, I thought it was a really unique experience, even after having seen Daredevil, of previous years. And it did things psychologically that you wouldn't really expect out of a superhero show. We see the superhero being less than heroic. It seems like Jessica Jones has a lot of rage and a lot of determination, but she's not going to flaunt the fact that she's got powers unless she really needs to. So
I think unique is the word. If we're going to add it to the superhero genre, maybe that's a whole discussion about whether or not it's a superhero show at all. But it is definitely unique, very human. You talk about rage, and how she deals with rage is all the wrong ways. especially in the beginning, where she drinks too much, she pushes friends away, she's destructive, and that's not something you see a lot of shows about, a superhero or not, just a person who is struggling like this.
Yeah. And about the after effects of trauma. We see a lot of trauma happening in superhero shows or in other crime drama shows, but we don't see the lingering aftermath so much, or the way that, like you were saying, it could psychologically scar someone and wound them for the rest of their lives. So I thought that was interesting, as well as at the beginning, we're just seeing everything after the main event is happening until it kind of circles around and comes back until Kilgrave returns. And we see that cycle starting all over again. I would think about the idea of it being a superhero show. I think when I was watching it, superhero was secondary in my mind because the powers I felt were there, obviously, but were kind of in the background for me, at least as to what I was watching for. I don't know what you both thought about that.
In the beginning, for sure, if not throughout the series, the superheroes were in the background. So she's got super strength. She can jump, she can lift, but she's not big and green like the Hulk. She just looks like a normal person. And I kind of thought that she was hiding those powers the same way she was hiding her pain, hiding her trauma. Like, I don't want people to know that I'm this superhero because I can't be the superhero, because I'm struggling so much, because I'm hurt so much. It's kind of just when she wanted to hide her pain, so she just hid everything. She didn't want anyone to know. Even when people ask her questions about her business and her job, she would lie, she would defer, she would be defensive. She would say, yeah, I'm a private investigator. No, you don't have to know why. No, I don't really want to talk about what I do. Just let me do it. I think Luke Cage asks her, why do you do it? And she says, I'm good at it. It's barely even an answer, right? But she doesn't want to tell anyone anything about her because she doesn't want this one thing to get out. So she hides all the things all the time from everyone she can, even her best friends, even from new friends. It doesn't matter. She is on the defensive.
Even as there's these great characters, Trish, who is an amazing kind of beacon of support when she needs her, but she also kind of takes advantage of her help in many ways. But then those relationships are very one way because she's so closed off. It's like they're there to help her and they're invested in her, but then it's like you were saying, she's not really reciprocating, I guess.
Right. But then the story, as the series goes on and the show goes on, it's about those openings up. It's about, she does call Trish once in a while. In the first episode, she's totally locked off. But then in the next episode, all right, I'll call you once in a while and we'll talk. All right, maybe I'll tell you a little bit. Maybe I will. And then ultimately take these major risks, put myself at risk for injury again, because I want to defend this young woman, Hope, who has been similarly abused by the same gentleman who abused her.
Did you feel like it fit the tropes of a traditional superhero show?
No, absolutely not. I don't think so at all. It's definitely noir. It's a detective story. It's slow-paced. It's very patient with building its characters and its themes. I found the beginning of the series to be very slow. Like, I almost gave up because the first two episodes, I like this character, I like this moment, but it's not really getting me. But I thought the second half was a huge payoff. It's like putting a tea kettle on the stove. Like, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. And then finally, all right, now we got a show. Now it's exciting. Now it's interesting. Now I'm interested in all these characters, even the ones I didn't like in the beginning. How did you feel about the rest of the series?
It definitely accelerated for me. I liked it. Yeah, it seemed like it wasn't going to slow down. Like, it had reached terminal velocity at like episode 8 out of 13, and then it kept kind of speeding up, which was great.
I feel like I had the opposite reaction where I was really pumped about it by episode 2 to 3, and it kept rising up for me. And then I think it peaked around, 6 or 7. And then once I felt like the motive behind Kilgrave, or that his psyche was kind of understood by the audience, obviously we learn more about his background and about his past as the show goes on. But we started to get more of these side plots where, to me, it seemed more unnecessary, or they're trying to pull the story along, that seemed more far-fetched. And I think it also has to do with my suspension of disbelief in what I saw as primarily a crime drama versus, a superhero show necessarily. It kind of lost me by the last third of the show. I kept watching because I wanted to see it wrapped up and brought together. But the impetus behind some of the characters didn't seem believable as much as you can say believable in this type of show.
No, I'll agree to that. And it didn't affect my enjoyment of the show as strongly as yours, but what kind of started Grounded as human. Like, it was so specifically like Jessica Jones and her struggle. Maybe it flew apart a little bit towards the end. I don't know. Especially with, like you say, the focus on the side stories.
Especially with, I think, the support group that was led by her neighbor. I forgot his name right now, but that story, I think, kind of made me think, did they need to add this in? It just kind of seemed more extraneous.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can absolutely agree with you on that. That's not a strength of the show.
You guys want to go down the avenue of how the different sidekicks had such great qualities in some ways, but we just got off talking about how maybe those avenues weren't that exciting, whereas I kind of thought they were. I thought the sidekick things were. Yeah.
So what stuck out? What did you like the most?
Right. So, wow, I wish we did have the name of her neighbor, because he was a recovering drug addict who had also been mind controlled at some point by Kilgrave. Ends up, leading that group, but also kind of picking up after Jessica in many ways. And I mean, it seems like he's almost like an integral to her actually being able to function, or actually, but she doesn't really care the collateral damage, but he's like, no, look at all, we got to manage it somehow. So I don't know.
I think his story was helpful for seeing Jessica's kind of emotional arc, or how she grows or doesn't grow as a character, to see her compared to him and how their dynamic together, I thought was interesting. Yeah.
That's Malcolm, right?
Malcolm.
Okay,
Ika Darville. Who, again, starts the series as just kind of a weird pest.
Yeah.
Eating her peanut butter and doesn't know where he is and what he's doing. Maybe that's the strength of the show, is character development. If you're interested in character development, this show has got it. Not only for our heroine, but for absolutely, for Luke Cage, for
Trish.
For Trish, for sure. Maybe there are too many characters to develop. Maybe that's a weakness of the show.
But dynamic female characters. So many female characters who are nuanced in so many ways. You have Jerry, the lawyer, her wife, her lover. There's just, usually you would have a couple women, but here there's a lot of women who are strong and difficult in a lot of different ways, I think, which is great for Marvel.
No one's easy to peg as a stereotype or an archetype. All these characters, they define themselves, or maybe they define themselves as an archetype in the first episode or the first scene, and then they go on to confound that, unravel and develop throughout the series.
It goes against what your expectations would be in a typical superhero type of show.
Right.
A superhero show or a superhero movie seems to be centered on the hero and the hero's journey, both the literal hero's journey and the development of that character. So this might be a matter of, it's a little bit different because it's more of an ensemble than we were expecting.
Yes.
Yeah. It's for a show that's called Jessica Jones.
Right.
Yeah. But not an ensemble the same way as Avengers, say, because she is the central location. She's the nucleus around which the rest of them are. But they definitely each have their own developed personalities, which is nice to have, not just have your background characters be cardboard cutouts that only have one aspect to them.
Yeah. It's a relief, actually, after watching or thinking about the Avengers and how Tony Stark kind of steals the spotlight, but then they're all kind of heroes anyway, so they're all stealing the spotlight. And this is very much a hero that doesn't want that.
Yeah,
she does not want to be noticed.
No.
So
they've already ordered a second season. There is talks of a Defenders movie on Netflix that kind of unites all these characters. So I am fascinated with where this character ends up in a second season in a movie. Daredevil, I can kind of imagine where he goes. Iron Fist or Luke Cage. We'll see when their shows come out if they're as compelling or not. But this character is the one of the four that I've really got my eye on. I'm not excited for Daredevil season 2, but I'm excited for Jessica Jones season 2.
Yeah, they left a lot of cliffhangers over her background and things that could get tied in moving forward. That did make me, even though I didn't like the last chunk as much, made me excited for her overarching personality. That would make me definitely come back.
I'm excited for it too.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for this episode. Tune in next time where we talk about The Martian.